The second cour of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc anime has just wrapped up with one of the most insane finales that totally blew all of my expectations. They have really gone above and beyond on all aspects by building upon Kubo's original work via these new anime exclusive scenes that we've been receiving throughout all of Cour 2. The second season of Bleach ended in a similar manner to the first cour, with the final 2 episodes of the season releasing at the same time, giving fans a fantastic double feature which had left us desperate for more episodes. In this video, I want to spend some time talking about the second part of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime in its entirety, talking about how much manga content was adapted as well as my highlights for each individual episode. I'll also be speaking about if there are going to be any changes made to the anime when we end up receiving from the 8th of July 2023 all the way up until the 30th of September 2023. Now be sure to stick around until the end of this video because I'll be talking about my predictions for Cour 3 of the anime and what we can expect as the 1000-Year Blood War arc begins its second half, which promises to add over 50% of new content across both Cour 3 and 4. So without further delay, here is my complete breakdown and analysis of the second season of Bleach's all new anime. Cour 2 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc adapted from chapter 543 all the way up until the midpoint of chapter 609, as it averages at 5.2 chapters adapted per episode. Now this is slightly faster pacing than Cour 1, which averaged at adapting 4.8 chapters per episode. Now Cour 2 did appear to rush through some aspects of the story, but when we look at it as a whole, it is understandable because they were building up to a finale that heavily reworked their manga material to such an extent that the last 2 episodes of the cour are completely unrecognizable to Kubo's original manga. Once again, several comedic scenes were cut from the anime, redundant scenes were also omitted in order to streamline the story, and it all seems to have been worth it because we ended up receiving several notable anime-only scenes in place of the cuts that were made. So let's begin my review of Cour 2 by discussing episode 14 as we look back at how Cour 2 had thrown us right back into the action. The 14th episode of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime is titled The Last 9 Days, and it adapts 4 chapters worth of manga material as we begin with a very dialogue heavy episode, with notable additions being made which really fleshed out the Sternritter as we got to see more of their reactions in the anime in response to Uryu being appointed as Yhwach's successor. This episode adapts manga material from chapters 543 to 546. There were some notable additions made to the episode, like the Bambis who were given more of a role within the anime. Episode 14 also featured the new opening and ending song for Cour 2, and honestly at the time I wasn't overly impressed with the opening because the visuals were very different to what I was expecting. The tone just didn't feel right in my opinion, but over the past few weeks the opening song has grown on me, and when it comes to the ending song for Cour 2, I thought that it fitted the tone of the story very well and I've always liked it ever since I heard it. I think that there were some concerns that episode 14 would omit the infamous Bambietta relief scene, but thankfully this had remained intact within the anime. The most memorable aspect of episode 14 was definitely the Yhwach birth sequence that we received at the very beginning of the episode. We learned that Yhwach had a mother who we see as a silhouetted figure who is holding Yhwach as an infant, as we get some amazing visuals which adapt material from chapter 565 in a very unique and impressive manner. Now nothing is explicitly explained to us like it is in the manga, but I do have hopes that they will be revisiting Yhwach's origin story in Cour 3 and 4. Episode 14 also featured all new scenes which involve Ichigo's training at Ichibe's palace. Now this leads us into a series of jaw-dropping post-credit scenes that we receive in the first few episodes of Cour 2. The first episode of Cour 2 also shows us Uryu's initiation into Yhwach's army. Now this aspect of the plot received many changes, with Hashwald no longer being as suspicious of his motive decision of making Uryu his successor. A prominent scene that was cut from the anime was when Hashwald's start of Cour 2 begins by removing all notions that Yhwach and Hashwald were doubtful of Uryu's